All right, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Hello. Hola, ¿cómo estás? That's it for not English, for Spanish. So thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Paul Trani, diving into how to a lot about typography, quite frankly, and Typekit. So basically we had something pretty special happen today that I want to tell you about. But first off, I want to give you a warm welcome to Kane and Omar. And Siobhan, all right, you already know what I'm talking about, which is all about these Bauhaus fonts, which are cool. We released 2 today, and I want to kind of dive into all of that goodness. If you are joining me on YouTube, if you could hop over to behance.net/live, that would be great, because I can only keep track of one chat at a time. It's kind of difficult. But yeah, Kevin and Kunal and Juan and Addy and Jazz and everyone, go to behance.net/live. If I could have you. I'll try to keep track of both, but typically we're on Behance and we're there all week. In fact, let's kind of talk about the schedule before we dive into content. All right, and we got Brazil in the house, Colombia in the house, Argentina, lots of South America. This is good to see, and so happy to have you here. Let me know if the music is too loud, and hopefully you can hear me okay and everything. Oh, Rob's in the house. Good to see you, Rob, my friends. I might turn down the music a little. All right. Joseph has arrived as well. All right, so regardless of where you're from, I want to welcome you. Yes, typography, all about it today. I'm going to click over to the schedule so you know what's happening. All right, so sorry about that, everyone. Apparently I switched my layout and it muted the mic. All right, so let's kind of run through this again, and deep apologies for that, this layout. I had the mic muted. Sorry about that. Let me check the others. Okay, everything else seems pretty good. And again, you can see right here what I was basically mentioning is we have Eric Speakerman at 8 a.m. We're going from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. This week. So usually we're 9 to 5. We're going to go 8 to 2. And that's the plan. Colby, good to see you here. Rob, yeah, it does happen. You know how you talk? You know how you're just talking to yourself? Yeah, that happened for a bit. But basically at 8 a.m., Scott Belsky is going to be in the office too, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but it's on the schedule that Scott Belsky, he's basically the executive vice president at Adobe over Creative Cloud. He's the chief product officer. So basically everyone's boss at Adobe, as far as Creative Cloud is concerned, he's going to be there. So Scott Belsky, I think with Michael Shays, and then Eric Speakerman's going to be there. Caterina Bianchini will be with us the next 2 days. I think Eric's only joining us for the first day. But the big thing you need to know, 8 a.m., 2 p.m., hang out with us. It's an hour earlier, and now you know. No problem, Siobhan. You are very sweet. Very nice of you. And again, if you are joining us on YouTube, jump over to Behance. .net, because you're probably saying the same thing. Where's the audio? All right. Good thing we're just dealing with visuals today, right? So you could actually, yeah, you can probably get a lot out of this even if you didn't have the volume on or if you had it muted like I did. So, but this is your getting started with this. And again, my name is Paul Trani. And if we could just kind of take a look. Trying out some things. This is getting started with typography and Typekit. So if I switch the layout, you can see we're going to dive into Typography Fundamentals. So yes, Yadira, it is a great roster. These are the type masters, if you will, like Eric Speakerman and a group of really awesome individuals are going to be working not only in just with typography, they're going to be using typography, you know, when it comes to motion design, graphic design, UI, UX design. So all areas, Abraham. So hope you like that. Yes, Yadira, definitely a great roster. Working across disciplines, which is going to be super fun. Alyssa's in the house. Good to see you, my friend. You always make me smile. Welcome. Good to have you here. But this is what I'm going to cover right now is just diving into the typography fundamentals. Okay, so you could go into this week winning, knowing more, just getting smarter and more intelligent and all that good stuff. So not only the fundamentals of type, but how to use Adobe Typekit so you can take advantage of these free fonts that we just released. So let's dive into that if we can. All right, and let me show you what I'm talking about right here. I'll just switch my screen and I'll pay a closer attention to chat. But this is what's happening. This is, you could literally go to adobehiddentreasures.com, and I'm going to post this link right now, but this is what we just launched today, and this talks about everything. So, Colby, there's not a challenge today. There will be this week. Don't worry, but yeah. And Joseph, we're doing this for new designers. That's why this is called Getting Started. So yes, I'm already speaking in terms you might not know, because this is like Bauhaus design. Like, what is that? And this is essentially what happens. There's lost typography from the Bauhaus masters. So Bauhaus means house. I don't know if it's new house, but it's a school of design from like the 1920s to the 1930s. Right, so it kind of has a retro look, as you can see from right down here, like this sort of thing. Okay, but essentially it's from the Bauhaus School of Design, and basically World War. I'm gonna probably screw this up. It should have been, if it was into the 30s. It should. I think it's World War II. Essentially, is what happened. But basically, there was a war. This is in Germany. All we have is fragments of type. And so what we did is we created 5 beautiful alphabets that have been meticulously completed. So again, 2 wars happened. We lost fonts, or like we found these fragments of fonts that they were working on, and then we recreated them for you to use. And it really is Eric Speakerman and his students. Eric's the biggest name in type that you can think of today. And he's going to be with us tomorrow at 8 a.m. So that'll be really cool. You could get the fonts right here. We could take a peek, but you could see that we've just released 2 so far. Okay, so there's Joshemi and then Zance, right? These are the 2 current fonts, and they're beautiful. Look at, isn't that nice? Oh, it's going to be fun to work. Siobhan couldn't have said it better. So excited. That's right. So the idea is, and I think Colby asked if there was going to be a design challenge. Colby, you've won a design challenge before, probably, but there are these challenges happening. So all you need to do is take those, and there's going to be multiple design challenges, if you will. But the design challenge today, or at least starting today, is this. Use one or more of the new Bauhaus design fonts to create a digital logo in the Bauhaus style. The winner will take home a 13-inch MacBook Pro. So that's awesome. Hopefully you like that, Ryan. Isn't that super cool? A MacBook Pro? Yeah, I know. Jesus, so expensive. They're so expensive. I bought a MacBook Pro recently off of Amazon like 2 weeks ago, and essentially it cost me $1,200, and it's like 5 years old. So this is huge. A 13-inch MacBook Pro? Yes, please. Check out the official rules. Make sure you meet those guidelines. But you can check out the assets here. What is this going to link to? It's going to be really straightforward. It's going to have these colors right here. We can follow this project, and here are a bunch of assets to use as well. So you have that link, and again, I started here on this page, went into design, share, and win. I'm going to make a logo, but really talk about typography, and yeah, the birthplace of modern design. Oh, it means building house. I said new house. I should have known that. Anyways, building house, Bauhaus, pretty straightforward. The vanguard of avant-garde. This is like, again, the birthplace of modern design, creating type. There's Eric. He's going to be with us tomorrow. So let's kind of dive into this. Let's get a hold of these fonts right now. Get the fonts right here. And that's the first thing we need to do. Where's the link? I will post it one more time. It's just Adobe Hidden Treasures. Posting it again. The link. There we go. Try this. There you go. Thank you, Benjamin. You're a good man. Appreciate that. So first thing we need to do is we're going to get some fonts, and then we'll talk about typography and everything. So let's just show you how to get these fonts initially. Selecting Get Fonts, it's going to launch Typekit, right? Typekit gives us access to thousands. I don't even know how many, but way too many, right? We all have thousands of these fonts on our desktop, and yes. And now I'm going to show you how to sync 2 more. How about that? Sorry, I've been ignoring YouTube chat. I don't mean to, but essentially, this is what I want to do. A couple things here. You can literally go to Adobe Typekit, and if you're a Creative Cloud member, you have access to all these fonts, right? Here are the 2s that we're talking about, the hidden treasures of Bauhaus design. And essentially, we have Joshemi and Zantz right here. What do? We can actually kind of take a look at the details of this fonts, but probably what you're going to do is you're going to hit the easiest button possible, which is this sync all. Now when I hit this sync button, it's going to sync these, whatever font I have selected, to my Creative Cloud, to my desktop. Okay, so if I go right over here, this is my desktop app, and I'll go into assets, and I'll go into fonts, and here are all my fonts that are currently synced, my long list, right? So if we want to take a look at, let's not worry about that one, but Zantz will actually appear in here. I got some that need to be taken care of. So there it is. Here's Zantz being synced right now. Okay, Zantz is being synced just because I hit that button. I'm at 98 out of 100 fonts, so yes, you can only sync 100, so typically I have to manage those, essentially, is what's happening. And then the other one was Joshemi. And I could make sure that's being synced as well. So under J, you can see it's being synced right now as well, okay? So once they're synced, they're gonna be available everywhere. So let's just kind of minimize this. It's being synced to my desktop. I don't even need to restart. This is kind of something I'm working on, is this logo for Pencil Factory. Okay, so it says create a logo in the Bauhaus style. And I think the Pencil Factory is basically a building where a lot of, it's a co-working space in Brooklyn. And I thought, okay, well, let's like make them a logo, right? So here's my, this is what all the cool kids do these days, is get rid of all the vowels, right? And then we can come in here. Let's see if it's synced. There it is, Xantz. So I can sync this Xantz font. I didn't even have to restart Illustrator or anything. This is Xantz and Yosemite. There's Yosemite right there. Boom. 2 fonts that I can work with for this project, right? I have these 2 fonts and I have about 1,000 others. Let me know if you have any questions about Typekit, because Typekit allows you to sync and use fonts on your desktop, right? There's my fun Stewie. It will sync fonts to my desktop like it's happening now, but also you'll actually have them available to be used on the web. So that's the idea, being able to use fonts on desktop and for web. So rich web fonts on the web, obviously, but that's where it got its start. So it's okay if you've never heard of it. Let me know if you have any questions. Alberto, you just got here. Why are you leaving? Here, have some coffee. Stick around. All right. Alberto, Helvetica family rules as well. Yeah, I've used Helvetica New like it's ridiculous. I have overused it, but that's been my favorite font because it's had the most like flexibility and the most different types of fonts as part of that typeface. And since I mentioned fonts and typefaces, and I said typography, and we're starting to use some of this as text, what's the difference between, fonts and type and all of that stuff? So I'm going to kind of dive into that right now. Ooh, good. Alistair, good call. I'm so glad you're asking this. How do I know which is the best to use for your app? Oh, sweet. This is what I want to talk about. Like, if I'm going to be making a logo, what do we need to understand about type and how to use them? And I started to put together a long bullet list. I thought it'd be a couple things, turned into be about 8 or 9. And I want to show that to you right now after I move my big head over. These are the Typography Fundamentals that I'm going to be using. This is always in my head, and Rob and Alexander probably know this. Colby probably knows this as well, but these are the Typography Fundamentals. Okay, all the things that we need to keep in mind when we're designing for type, or designing a logo in this case, right? So as part of that design challenge, if I'm going to be making a logo and then a poster and a whole brand identity, what do I need to keep in mind? And really, I think picking a typeface is all about legibility and you're trying to communicate is the short of it, right? So we know in my case for this, one of these two reads really easily and one of these don't, right? So look, this PNCL, the fact that it's just there's no vowels in it, it doesn't work in this case, right? So if I did PE, and maybe I'll even try it lowercase, PENCIL, this could work, right? This could be legible. I could maybe get away with Yosemite, but what I might want to use is Xantz in this case, right? Because this is actually much more legible than this one, right? And what type has one job, and that's just to convey information in writing. Like, that's it. You don't have to make it any more complex than that. But then I throw all these rules at you, right? We need to establish hierarchy, because chances are you're just not dealing with just one logo. You're going to establish things in forms of reads. What am I going to read first, second, and third? That's the biggest problem people have with design, especially if you're starting out, is too many things fighting for your attention. You should have a primary, right? A primary to look at, like a secondary, a tertiary. Your eye needs to flow through any design, right? Even as I take a look at this, right? Where is this pointing? I'll probably turn this off. Boop. Where is this pointing, right? What do you look at first out of these two? You're like looking at, well, geez, both of these? This one? No, we need to establish this as the main read, right? This element, if we're talking about the flow of the eye, I want to have this maybe even pointing at the logo itself. It's going to lead my eye down. This is technically an arrow. Think about all the edges and things. This is an arrow that points your eye and might lead it up this way. So I want to be very aware of what direction this is going. So again, I might kind of start it there and then, you know, kind of work on it some more. But I just started. Yeah, Marcel, if there was a big demand for Linux versions, we'd probably get on it. Okay, so let's move on. Torsten, good to have you here. I'm keeping an eye on Behance chat, so you can come over there. Thank you so much. Fantastic. And again, I'm going to work on this. This is the pencil factory. So just so we know what we're doing, we need a goal. The pencil factory. This is what I'm working on, and typically you would have a whole brief that says, okay, this is what's happening. We have the pencil factory, and we need to make a logo for it. Pencil factory, again, is just a co-working space in Brooklyn. It was one. That's why we're going with this retro look and feel. And everything sends a message, like everything, right? So the choice of your font sends a message. These two fonts definitely send an old school-like message, right? But it's also has this contemporary look right here. So this is what I want to do, is have a contemporary spin on this, let them know that we're not actually making pencils, but we're designers that are working there. So that's the idea. Trenton, are you allowed to modify the fonts, or does it violate the license? No, you can modify this font all day long. I might think about doing that as well, even as I go in here. And I'm currently working in Illustrator. I can take this, and you all do this, right? You duplicate that element, and you can say, hey, create outlines, right? So in Illustrator, creating outlines, I basically broken this apart. Let's ungroup it, and I can start to modify this, and that's what we typically do as designers, is kind of modify elements. The thing is, you don't want to redistribute it as if you are the owner of that font, so you can't like modify it and sell it and call it your own, because that's wrong, right? So do I want to do something like this, kind of modifying that font and bringing that down like that? So this might be a potential for a logo. Look at how strong this is. Hopefully this still reads as an N, right? And typically, Trenton and Alyssa, you know this. Thank you so much for being here. You know this, Alyssa. Like, if you're ever making a logo or just some sort of masthead, you can mess with the inner letters, but not the outer letters. I usually stay away from those because, you know which words start with a P and end with an L, even though the middle gets jumbled up. So I'd say modify the insides. Be very careful with the last letters. You really dislike the round N. I'll always open to your opinion, what everybody thinks, at least for a logo. Yeah, I will say this N is kind of hard to read for this pencil factory, but it's pretty cool. I think what we'll do here is we'll start pairing fonts. So we're starting with our logo, and let's talk about typography and pairing fonts. And I want to show you something else that's really cool too. The pencil. All right, so this says pencil. Like, what? Are you selling pencils? What's this all about? Oh, underneath, I want to have text, right? And so this is your secondary read. And now let's talk about pairing fonts. Like, how would you do that? Let me kind of switch back to my Typography Fundamentals. But we have, you want to pair fonts, but make sure they're not too similar. Similarm. Apparently I have an extra M in there because I was actually adding a URL right in there. But I want to talk to you about pairing fonts now. And I want to talk about the two different types of fonts. Okay, so the big thing is just don't make sure they're too similar. If you have two sans serif fonts that are pretty similar, what's the point in even pairing them, right? In fact, they'll often say you should pair serif with sans serif. Now that I mentioned serif and sans serif, let's take apart typography. Let's talk about typography as a whole. Yadira? Cool. Yeah, so you'd have a serif and a sans serif. And let's pick apart type. You could see it right here. In fact, I could hardly see that. You have basically the serif, as it shows right in here, is going to be those little feet that come off of letters. There's serif, and then there's sans serif, or without a serif, and then you have all these different really elements that would help you maybe pass a typography quiz. All right, that's what most of these are good for. I want to point out too, which would be obviously the serif and the X height. Keep in mind the X height, the height of, say, a lowercase o. That's going to be your X height, or an X. A lot of times, actually, X height? You know, they show an O here, but if they had an X, that's where that comes from. A lowercase x is the X height. And I typically, when I pair fonts, I want to make sure it's maybe a serif and a sans serif, and then I'm very mindful of the X height. I want the X heights to be similar, right? So that's the whole idea. Keep in mind serif and X height. Those are the only two things you need to know there. The rest is just fancy stuff for, you know, helping you pass a quiz. Right, so let's take a look at this. Let's gotta do this. And let's just have fun, right? Here I am in Illustrator, and I'm just kind of tabbing down. Let's start pairing these. This is what you would do. I know everybody does this, by the way. Let's take a look at some combos. Here's our... We can see our little serif right here. Boop. And then this would probably be a sans serif. So what's a good sans serif? Anybody have a good? Again, we can go into Helvetica. Let me show you one better. Check this out. Acumen. I've been into Acumen. Check this out. Oh, I gotta show you this. This Acumen variable concept font, right? So what I did in Illustrator, and you can do this in Photoshop as well, but I can go ahead and star my favorite fonts. So I can say, hey, Xantz and Yosemite, I'm just gonna go ahead, Yosemite, I can make those my favorites. So they're always gonna be at the top of my list, but I wanna pair Xantz with another font. I might pick an Acumen variable concept font. I love this. Are you aware of this, Mike? Oh, Futura. Oh, you guys are good. Futura. I love Futura. I really do. Futura might be a good one. You have your go-tos. Arial has a go-to. Din. Oh, see? Ah, good. Watch out for those mini arrows. It means they're families. Yadira. Ah, I'm just giving you a bow. It's awesome. Because you're exactly right. Some people will call these fonts, and they are, but they're all part of a family. Okay, so there you have a type, which is Xantz or Acumen. That's your typeface, and your typeface can have 50 zillion different types of fonts in it. So that's exactly what's going on here. Selecting Pencil Factory, I'll just kind of duplicate this. Going in here, Acumen variable concept, this is the typeface. We could see it right here, okay? But within that, it has all these different fonts. So I can roll over these and have it change, but I'm gonna show you one even better. Do you know about this? I'm gonna click in here. I have this little button right here, and I'll try to zoom in on that a little closer. This little button right here. This means this is a variable font, and you can adjust the variableness, right? So that's what I want to do. Click right there. And now I can actually scrub through the different weights. See what's happening? The weight, the width, and the slant. I can scrub through the different weights of this font. Like that. Or the different widths. Right? Or the slant as well. So these are some of the things I want to think about. I probably want to make this a light font. But let's give it some width. Right? So let's make it a little bit thicker than this. Kind of like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And what I'm pairing it with is not this one. I'm going to pair a serif with a sans serif font. So I think I might try something like that. The whole goal is to make these two like legible and work together. Okay, I'm going to shrink down the size. And in this case, I want them still to work together nice and neat. So what I would do is I'd make sure the thickness of this base is the same thickness as the font itself, just below it. So that's what I do, and that's what I could do with this variable concept font. because there's 50 zillion different versions, but I can start to adjust the weight and get it just right like that. And that's what I want. Now we have that nice similarity. It's going to be nice and tied up, because if it's close to that particular thickness and it's not, it's going to kind of throw your eye off. So this is what you do real professionally. Like you're like, drag this over. This is what you do, right? You do this. You're like, oh, let's see, it's pretty close. I'm probably off a touch. But that's how I'd actually very scientifically measure those two. Right? I want to make sure these are flush from side to side, and I can turn on rulers and all that fun stuff. But this looks pretty good. Oops. That's not bad. I don't know. I'm open to your opinion. Help me out here. Proxima is your favorite sans serif currently. Tell me your favorite font. I would love to hear your favorite font. Proxima might be your favorite font overall, but let me notice that. Let me tell me what your favorite font is. This font is really growing on me. Xantz is really growing on me. Look at that. It's just awesome. You could do so much with this. What is this considered? Well, it's considered a header font, right? That's what this would be. I wouldn't use this for body copy, but I would use Acumen. So let me know your favorite font. I think some of you might have already been saying that. Good morning, Torsten and Melissa. Feel free to hit that share button, tell your friends about this, and to just recap why we're doing this, we have this scheduled right here, 8 a.m. Pacific time, clear to 2 p.m. Pacific time, but we're going an hour earlier, working with Eric Speakerman and some awesome designers that are dealing with motion design, of course, graphic design, UI, UX design, all this week using fonts and everything. And Eric's the one that helped put this font together that you're looking at right now, okay? Aditya says future. Oh, Fira. I want to write these down because I'm totally interested. Okay, so here's my logo so far. Maybe it needs some work. I almost want to like make this much more elegant. I don't think this is elegant enough. I'm gonna some little shortcuts for you, just so you know. If you hold down the command key, the option and command key when you have text selected in Illustrator, it will basically adjust the tracking. What's the difference between tracking and kerning? Does anyone know? Ooh, Zilla Pro Extra Black. Rob has a shirt that says Extra Black, right? It says Extra Black on it. I love it. You've been using Dosis? Melanie, good to know. All right, so awesome. So anyway, still kind of refining this. This does look a little bit better. I can always thicken up that font a touch more, which we'll do in a second. And I'm basically making a logo. Let's thicken this up a little. There we go. That looks better. Very, very tied in. I wish I had the shortcut for Windows is Alt, Control, and then arrow to the left or right to work on tracking. Yes. Oh, that's good. Natalia, you said it well. Tracking works for the entire word, and kerning works for the neighboring letters or the space in between a letter. So, yeah. Oh, let me show you something else about pairing fonts, because that's essentially what I just did for this project right here. And I feel like adding... Did you know that scientifically they've done studies, scientists have done studies on people when they look at shapes, and when they look at shapes, you know, circles always have a very pleasant feel to people. They're considered to, you know, bring joy to you. Circles are good. Hard edges, maybe not so good. So if you want to make something very, you know, peaceful and bring joy and happiness. This doesn't have any sharp edges to cut yourself with. So that's why I just put it in a circle, because I think it looks kind of cool that way. All right. Ooh, Yuri, I'm copying. Oh yeah, you have some good ones. I'm sorry, I'm just reading some of these favorite fonts. Futura, Avenir, Din, Gil Sans, Courier New, Bedoni, Dido. Not a huge fan of Courier New, but you know, every font has its place. Let me save this. Let's move on. I want to talk about pairing fonts, just like I mentioned a second ago. You can see right over here. I'm going to go to mixfont.com. You can go to mixfont.com. This is not any Adobe product, but Mixfont is a fun and simple way to discover and visualize new fonts, right? So let's start the generator. It's just going to start to pair two fonts. So again, here's, this actually is an okay one. So they're comparing Tima with Anton here. So I can say, hey, you know what? I like Anton. Anton's way too, yeah, too thick for me. So Cabin Sketch paired with Text Me One. And again, I just kind of discovered this site and I thought it was kind of interesting. Every single time what they're going to do is they're going to have this heading font that's going to be pretty artistic and fun. And this font below it will probably be easier to read. So that's probably what they'll do, right? They'll compare those two. But I'm going to go one beyond that. Okay, so this is kind of more my style. I love Slab Serif. Ryan, I don't know if you know what, Ryan probably knows what Slab Serif is. Slab Serif is a slabs for the serif. So that little jutting out piece right there, that's the slab. And I love slab serifs. Like Museo, love Museo. Slab serif is awesome. Right, and so we could do this all day long. This one's fun too. Let me go beyond that. What if you're in Typekit? Check this out. I'm just gonna be cruising around Typekit, right? I'll just be browsing fonts like you do. Typekit is available to you as a Creative Cloud member. And right in here, I can pick, oh look, this gives me all these different type families. I can browse by the style. So sans serif, serif, like I just mentioned, slab serif, script, you get the idea. So this is a new thing as well. You can actually drop a file here to scan that font for text. You can also use Adobe Capture. Are you aware of this? Yadira, let me know. I'm going to launch Adobe Capture. And I'm going to use this bottle right here. And I'm going to show you this really fast. All right. So you ready for this? All right. Yes, okay, let me show you. Oh, Type O is good. Let's kind of dive into this a little bit more. Again, I'm in Typekit. I showed you mixed fonts. I can take a look at some of these other fonts. So I can take a look at Sign Painter, for instance, any one of these and read all about it. That's fine. I don't have that kind of time, right? This is what I want to get into. I'm searching just kind of through the sans serif fonts, okay? But check this out. Right down here in Typekit, they have these two. So if you're looking at pairing fonts, think about, you can say, hey, show me the heading fonts versus showing me the paragraph fonts. So I can show me the heading slab serif fonts, right? And for this font, let's make it a really fat font, the weight, make it heavy. But this is like having a type expert in your back pocket. So this is what I can do. Slab serif, heading, extra thick, and then I end up with these options right in here. And I can kind of dive into this further with, you know, checking out the caps only, etc. You could also double check just to make sure you have support with all of these different languages as well, the language support right down there. So for me, I can come in here and I'm thinking, again, Jubilat. It might be one that I can go ahead and sync, but I mainly just wanted to show you this. If you want to have a type expert in your back pocket, it's going to be Adobe Typekit, essentially. yeah, being able to check out all these. And by the way, this is also a newer thing. So this is a variety pack of screen design. Let's check out a look at this grouping of different type, because we will package up fonts for you and say, hey, you should use these fonts if you're doing any variety pack for screen design. So we do our best to group fonts together for you, which is awesome. Again, what we want to do is when we're pairing fonts, and let's kind of move down my list. We want to establish visual hierarchy, right? So primary read, secondary read. We want to pair fonts together, make sure they're different enough, but then I make sure that X height is typically like the same. You want to make sure you're using lots of white space, right? So you don't need to clutter up a design, but space is a thing, all right? So even if you're looking at a letter, there's that negative space. That is a shape of a circle, right? So keep in mind the white space. Group elements by alignment. Of course you should be doing this, right? Make sure the text is legible. This is really simple stuff. You know, we need to make sure the stuff is easy to read. If I go back to my design, making sure pencil is easy to read, which is why I picked that font. Use color appropriately, right? Color gets introduced later usually. I kind of introduced some of it, but all I'm doing is just adding a little bit of depth with just like this little splash of color. And even for this, I might consider doing some more things. Let's see if I can actually use my paint bucket. Let's see if I can. There we go. So I just kind of dropped in some color. And that's probably not even the best color, actually, because I might want this to be. So what I'm doing here in Illustrator is I'm using the Live Paint Bucket tool, right? I'm using that, and then since there's no color there, no shape there, I can use that Live Paint Bucket, and I'm just using the arrow keys. Can you see that? I'm using the arrow keys to kind of toggle through all of these different colors that I have, right? And I want to pick an orange because that's what color pencils are. So I can drop that right in there, just like that. Okay, so that's a little Illustrator action for you. I can consider using this. When I'm working with colors, I want to make sure I'm using contrasting colors as well. A warm color with a cool color. They're both going to have the same intensity as well. But again, this isn't color theory. This is all about fonts. InDesign also has this similar font option as well. That's quite new. Thank you, Yadira. I don't work a lot in InDesign, and thank you so much for that tip. Open to all the tips that you have. Again, since this session is being recorded, sorry if you feel like, I don't want you to feel like you're being ignored, but if you're watching the replay, sometimes, you know, we just want to get straight to the meat of it, which is really all the fundamentals that you should know as a designer right in here, or at least pretend to be a designer. I know I do that all the time, right? Let's just pretend, right? We have group elements, of course, by alignment. Text is legible. We use color. Stick with no more than a couple of fonts per image, right? So if we're making a poster, we want to stick to a couple. If you go beyond 3, it's going to look like you don't know what you're doing. Like, have confidence in the 2 fonts that you pick. So add variety to make something pop. That's what essentially I did here, right, with this logo. You know, it's kind of boring otherwise, because creating a logo isn't just picking a font. That's not what it is. It might use it as a starting point, but here we've added some variety by modifying this font. So if I just select this text, we can go ahead and create outlines and modify that and add some variety to it. And that's even what I'm doing with this color here as well. So let's move on. Let's move on. Use Typekit to make life easy. Hey, how about that? I'm always curious about... Illustrator has that option too. It's the wavy icon next to the star. Oh yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, you're right. I know what you're talking about, Yadira. Let me go ahead and focus on that. Because as I'm starting to work on this, I'm starting to make a poster, right? So again, the design challenge is really just making a logo. This is what I have so far for my logo. And typically what we'll do is we'll like make a couple different versions. right? I'll bring in, like, I'll have some other design elements I'm kind of thinking about. I'm working on these two logos. Let's bring in this design element. Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. I'm making two logos. You're gonna have to give me a second. I'm using both these fonts that are new today. Monday, June 11th, that is. And I'm only gonna go for about 10 more minutes. I'm using Yosemite now, and in this case, PNCL. You like how I'm just trying to make two logos on the fly using these brand new fonts available. So what if we do something like this? Again, just designing on the fly. Let's do something that looks like a pencil. This is going to be the same width as this right here, this line, this letter. I'll rotate it. And let's fill it using the, actually, let's make sure this is black, black, black. There we go. Wait for it, wait for it. Changing the font color. I don't know if I want to be as literal as to actually make a pencil is the problem. But do I want to do something like this? I don't know. I'm working on it. I need a little bit of help. I need a little bit of help. I do. If you ever need to make a triangle, right? This is essentially what I need to do in Illustrator. There's no triangle option right over here, but what I can do is grab the Polygon tool, right? Polygon, clicking. Actually, this is what I could do. I could drag out, right? And hopefully you might not be able to see that. Let me adjust the layer color to a red. So as I drag this out, I want to make a triangle. I can see those, 5 sides, but I can use my arrow keys. I can move them up and down. So you can see how I'm adding and removing the different sides just by using the arrow keys. So I'll move that clear down to as low as it can go, just pressing the down arrow, and now I have this nice triangle. So this is what I can use on the fly, bring that right down here, and add that accordingly like that. Work with me. What I typically do in this case, thicken this, because we know thick lines are kind of really cool right now. I want this stroke to be on the inside and not just the outside. So I can go over here to the stroke, clicking on that word, and right over here, I can have the stroke aligned to the inside. Clicking right there, and now it's on the inside, and that's more along the lines of what I want. All right, wait for it, wait for it. I still got work to do. Trying hard to impress you. Giving it a nice little tip you can hit. Shift X, if you're into shortcut keys, Connor probably knows this, but I flip these two. Shift X will flip the foreground with the background color, and that's what I want to do just to get a nice little pencil. Might be too literal, but what I wanted to do is to make two logos using both those fonts to get something nice, and this is kind of nice and clean. I kind of like this. Does it serve me, does it do me any favors if I bring this down? Is it like resting on it? Yeah, I'll go with that, sure. Let's thicken up this stroke a little bit more. I'm going to make sure the stroke here is the same thickness as these letters. So we don't, thank you, you're very kind. You don't have to necessarily, you want to do things for a reason. think about, like, how thick is this line? Why is it that thick? Is it a style that is hot today? Perfectly acceptable. In this case, I need that thickness of that line to match the thickness of this font, right? And it just brings that continuity to the design as a whole, okay? Do I disconnect it there? Do I move that in? I think that's pretty good. I think we have two that we could potentially use. Maybe I still want to use this circle. Does it work? Does it not work? Does it need to have anything behind it? But I'm going to have you vote on which one you like best. Let me adjust this. I still need to work on this font. Now that I put it over here, let's increase the, what do you think, too much? There we go. Okay, so here are my two designs. Again, what I'm doing is I'm making a logo based on the logo challenge. I've got these fonts, right? I got Yosemite and Xantz. I used both of them. This is the Design, Share, and Win challenge that I dove into. Kind of get the whole idea of creating a logo to win potentially a 13-inch MacBook Pro, okay? So all you have to do is make sure you meet the official rules and requirements, and then do a hashtag Adobe Hidden Treasures and contest, right? So that's what I've done. What I typically want to do is I would want to turn this into a Behance project, and I need to describe everything that's happening. So I can't just like make a logo and say, here's a logo, what do you think? There's no context there. It needs to be like, you know, you need to write up exactly what you're trying to do, and that's what I do here. This is a logo for Pencil Factory. It's basically was a pencil factory, now it's a co-working space. Cool. All right, thank you so much. So here's the two. Which tell me which one you like better, left or right, and then I can, I guess, post it, send it out. I know which one I like. Yes, good call, Alistair Holmes. The second one looks more industrial-like and more like a proper factory. And this is the fine line, because what I want to do is I'd want to type that up. So I'd want to say, hey, hold on, wait for it. A co-working space in Brooklyn for designers, right? It could be a made-up logo. In this case, this is, you know, a real place. So it was a pencil. So now it's where all the cool kids hang out. You get the idea. Ooh, we have left, we have right. Maybe monochromatic. Ooh, I like that. So monochromatic would make it look more like timeless, but can also give it like an old look, but you have to be able to determine how well this logo is going to hold up if it's being printed in black and white. Reverb mics, like, yes, cost less to print, the second one. You know, another thing that's influencing this whole thing is the fact that I have a background color of blue. So let's turn that off. So how do these look? If they're on color, what if they're inverted, right? That's another test I'd want to do, is see which one stands out if I invert that logo. If I look at this upside down. If I look at this logo compared to other logos, like what other establishments, what do their logos look like? And how will my logo look like next to theirs? Does it hold up well? Do you make a small one? It's all a bunch of branding stuff, but you get the idea. Pairing fonts is great. Trey likes the left one. All right, good. Suleiman, I agree with you. Ooh, you really like the right one. Okay, interesting. Trey, I like the left one, to be honest with you. But either way, it doesn't matter. All I need to do is basically post that to Behance is what I would do, and submit it for that contest that I just showed a second ago. But again, this is that design challenge. So you can get started right now just based on some of the things you've learned today. Design challenge. Now you have that link. And again, my goal today was to teach you all about typography, really the fundamentals. If something's looking right, that's great. If something's looking off, take a step back, come back to it, and then, you know, figure out, maybe you'll see with fresh eyes what's working, what's not working. Typically what people have a hard time with is when things are fighting, right? So establishing hierarchy, that's the number one rule you need to remember, right? Is make sure that everything's set up in terms of reads, okay? And even if we take a look at the logos that I made, we can see that, you know, one of them's very self-contained. This one right here is pointing, I have an arrow that's pointing this way. Like, where's that going? Is it just a pencil, right? I don't know. Like, there's just different things I need to think about. You know, where are all these lines pointing to? So anyways, lots to think about when it comes to typography. I'm interested in all resources you're interested in. Siobhan, I don't know how many you can submit, but you'll have to read the official rules. And I'm sorry I haven't been through all of them today, but you can see it right in here. So yes. Oh yeah, by the way, the closes. Anyway, so you'll have to read over these rules. That'll put you to sleep. If you're watching this recording, again, my name is Paul Trani. I really appreciate you. Why are we doing this? We have a fun week planned with type gurus and masters in wonderful Paris. I wish I was there. I'm broadcasting from an empty house in Denver. But I really appreciate you and everyone here joining me. So tune in tomorrow. Again, it's at 8 a.m. and here's the schedule. Join Eric Speakerman. I think maybe Scott Belsky will be there. Not 100% sure. I just saw it on the schedule and I got all excited about it. Oh yeah, reverb mic. Here's the pencil. The pencil points the way. Oh, I love it. I just love, I could spend all day doing this stuff. And I really hope you guys have time to be creative as well. That's all that I ask. Really appreciate you, everyone. Lewis and Trey and Vincent, Soliman. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. My name is Paul Trani. Have a beautiful day. Be kind to your neighbor. Make sure you're flossing and brushing every day because you should, and call your mom. And be creative. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and I will talk to you soon.